Thank you for joining us this evening for this iteration of our Tuesday talks, during which we have our following panelists who will be discussing their explorations of new dimensions of creativity in AI, VR, and XR. I will begin by introducing briefly our panelists, of which we have here, joining over Zoom, Recycle Group, who's hello to Recycle Group. They sadly, I don't think, can see you. But they are currently exhibiting their works on our main gallery floors. So here are two of their works, and also downstairs. So if you have time later, please do go take a look. And so Recycle Group is formed by Andrei Blokhin and Georgy Kuznetsov in 2008. They explore the realm of virtual reality using both recycled imagery and materials, their work aiming to bridge incompatible subjects such as the classical with the contemporary. Next, we have Matteo Zamagni, who is seated here over Zoom also, whose work is exhibited in our project space on our lower ground floor. And Matteo's practice encompasses visual arts, multimedia installations, film production, and electronic music, combining these unique yet interlinked contemporary technologies with oracular themes. Zamagni reflects on the environmental, economic, and social turbulence of today. We also have Sougwen Chung here in person joining us, who was our Gazelli February resident, who we've been working with. And Sougwen is a Chinese-Canadian artist and researcher, and is the founder and artistic director of Silicate, a London-based studio exploring human and non-human collaboration. We also have Pita Arreola, who is the Curator of Digital Art at the V&A and the co-founder of Offsite Project. And then finally, we have Luba Elliott, who will be curating this evening, moderating this evening, sorry. However, Luba is a curator and writer and researcher specializing in artificial intelligence in art. And before I let them begin, I'd also like to announce that tonight we have launched our first POAP that you have most likely been handed at the door upon entrance, which is very exciting for us, as we hope to have some exciting community benefits throughout the rest of the year. So if you manage to get one, and if you need any help kind of going through the claiming process, be sure to kind of come find me and I can help you if need be. So I'll hand it over to you guys now.
Thank you so much for the introduction and for setting up this evening. I hope you're all kind of okay in the audience. I see a few people kind of standing on the stairs. I don't know if there's any kind of space at the back. If not, kind of feel free to move over there. Yeah, it's so great to have so many of you here for our discussion. And I also hope you had a chance to kind of look around the gallery at the Recycle Group artwork kind of over here on the ground floor, and also at Matteo's work kind of down in the basement. And if you haven't, please do that, because I think you should enjoy it. And to start off with, I thought it would be useful if each panelist would just say kind of a few words about their work, because obviously we've got the exhibitions here. And from then on, we can kind of discuss various topics related to technologies and artistic practice and the role of institutions, and more kind of global things related to how technology influences the world. So yeah, maybe Matteo, if you could start off with and say a few words about your installation, which is kind of down in the basement.
Yeah, sure. So basically, it's kind of like a new realm for me to combine tech, sort of like immersive experiences involving tech and sort of like physical, more traditional mediums. And I guess, you know, VR played like a nice, it was like the glue for both of these worlds, where on one side I could play with perceptions and you know, virtual spaces and combining them with physical spaces as well. and obviously that kind of like lays the ground for me to go in and explore the sort of like themes that, you know, I wanted to convey through that. And I think, you know, VR being like so immersive plays quite a profound role in the ways that it kind of like submerges the viewer, the participants. So it becomes sort of like an active exploration of the artwork. And it's sort of like a free roam experience where, you know, there's not many rules involved. You just go in. I mean, you get in the exhibition space, and the sort of physical works gives you a sort of introduction of what will be happening in the VR. And then once you get in, you kind of like freely explore. Even though it's a narrow space, I think it's yeah, it gives you a little bit of freedom, at least for this initial sort of like prototype, I would say, to kind of go around and look at, you know, each different features subjectively and get an idea of what it is on your own, you know. And yeah, that project sort of touches on themes that I've been dealing with pretty heavily in the past, and which is mainly, you know, the current state of the world, and you know, what we're kind of like we're facing right now in terms of like changes and catastrophe and mass multi-species extinctions, and, you know, threats to biodiversities and various, you know, ecosystems globally. So it's kind of like a bit of a critique on, you know, modern day capitalism and this industry that drives, you know, the stabilization of the world's ecosystems and the biosphere, pretty much. And it's a take on what we kind of have lost from our ancestors from many different parts of the world, where, you know, even today, they are resilient and they have a way of living with nature that that is in balance. And that was the key point for me to kind of like, you know, bring forward and visualize in a way, and talk about, because I think it's, you know, I really admire their way of living. So yeah, I hope this is sort of like a brief introduction, which we can expand further.
Yeah, sure. That's really useful. And now over to you, Recycle Group.
Hi. Hi. So nice to see you. Thanks, Matteo. Thank you. Yeah, just shortly to explain our works, like our exhibition in Gazelli. So this is our, I think, third show there, and we are exploring the reality, the new media in this our new reality, and we're trying to find some answers how it can develop in the future. And this is actually the first project where we used AI to generate our physical objects as well. And so this is a new experiment with some technologies that we did in the previous projects, like during some years. And so here you can see the big project about hope in generally, like how we can use the AI in the better way without only bad catastrophical like forecasts. So how we can turn it into the good side. And this was the idea of hope, how our civilization can use AI even to guide it in some questions. And we've been trying to make the project about the future, about some utopian story, how our society can live with control of AI, like a futuristic topic. And there you can see panels with the landscapes with the different reliefs that were generated by AI. and then we turned them into the reliefs and the forest of expired links when you enter the gallery. So this is like posing a question like about the sources of the information and how we should really keep it, and about the transparency of this utopian world, so how people can really build a democracy there. So generally, this is like the general topics of the show. And so I hope you saw it.
Yes, thank you. Sougwen?
Yeah. It's really exciting to hear about other artists' work. I haven't actually seen the work yet because I just got here before the panel, but I feel like that was an amazing primer to what I'm seeing in the room and what we saw downstairs. Yeah, so thank you so much for coming. This was an amazing turnout for a Tuesday, and yeah, right.
I can't really see you, but
the room is packed. So my name is Sougwen Chung. I'm the February Gazelli IO resident. I describe myself as an artist and researcher, and I think that really means I like to ask questions about the technologies that I work with. I sort of, what's the word? I rebel against this idea that there's traditional art and technologically mediated art. I'm really interested in the work through working with AI systems, robotic units, VR, XR, obviously, recently more motion capture, data of performance, and thinking about where AI ends and we begin is one steering question I have. I explore that through thinking about how the drawn mark translates through data, through feedback loops, through recurrent neural networks, and through robotically mediated systems linked to my own gestures in performance. I've been thinking a lot about stepping into a simulation and what that means to make work as a 3D avatar, bringing that into the virtuality of performance. I did a lot of those explorations for my Gazelli residency, which some of it's behind you in a cycle. And I think I engage in a lot of the complexities of these technologies to really create new entry points for discussing what becomes of the human hand, and also what it means to really explore these traditional forms with technological invention in a way that changes both in a really, hopefully radical, but also inclusive and sometimes funny, scary, sublime kind of way. So I think conversations like this are really interesting, and I'm excited to have them with you.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you, Sougwen. And Pita, could you say a few words about your practice? And
Yeah, hi, I'm Pita Arreola. I'm Curator of Digital Art at the V&A, the Victorian Albert Museum. And I'm also co-founder of Swipe Project. And for those of you who are not acquainted with the V&A Digital Art Collection, the collection holds around 2,500 objects that expand from the 1960s into the present. And most of the artists in the collection are looking into new ways of living or modern ways of living and how technology is affecting the way we behave and think about everyday life.
yeah, thank you.
I was trying to be concise.
Yeah, I think we could talk for a long time, couldn't we? Yeah, so now I'd like to start kind of thinking about your artistic practice and what kind of drew you to begin to work with technology, right? Because there are so many different mediums available, and why is kind of AR, VR, XR, and all these other new technologies, why were they interesting and appealing to you? Don't know who'd like to start.
I guess I can start. I, like many people in this room, maybe have been working with technology and maybe perpetually and online for my entire life in a certain way. And a lot of what my original impetus for working with art in general came through playing a violin and thinking about the instrument as something that you could really transform and communicate and express through. Obviously, technological mediation is the issue of our times, so I wanted to translate that into tools and systems that I would build to try to express and interrogate a lot of what that means. A lot of my work was centered around a project called Drawing Operations Unit, Generation 1, now in its 5th generation, and almost its 10th year, which is horrifying in a certain way. But thinking about technology and the robotic unit and the system as a type of collaborator or inflection point for thinking about the mark and performance and my own agency within this human-machine configuration. So that was a curiosity I had that drove a lot of what I do now.
Should I start? For me, it's quite hard to sort of like define it gradually, because I guess like the way I use tech as a medium, it kind of gradually developed, you know, what I do now, which is kind of like use emerging technologies for a variety of purposes. So I based, you know, depending on what I want to achieve and how I want to convey it, I choose the sort of like different mediums available, whether it's, you know, something immersive with virtual reality or something like screen-based or projection mapping. But everything, it's kind of like turned into this real-time feast of visualizing. And I guess it comes back from like my early days in the art. You know, I've always evolved the sort of like the way I was doing art, you know, from you know, traditional art in high school. It became, I started getting into photography, and then graphic design, and gradually it became from still image, and it turned into moving image, and then from moving image I started developing visual effects, and then gradually getting into CGI. And then, you know, it all kind of developed organically. I didn't have an idea back at the time, but now I can see like the patterns of my sort of like progress. Until then, when I met a bunch of really, you know, amazing new media artists like Quayola or Field, or people like Memo Acton or Marshmallow Laserfist in London. They sort of like open my mind of what was possible, and not just to make, you know, I guess like offline like renders, as in like the traditional way of creating 3D, for example, or visual art in general. They kind of like open my eyes to kind of like new modes of creating this, which would enable like interactive experience, or let the sort of like visitors engage with the works a lot more, or enable me to kind of like create sort of holistic experiences where I was able to tie in sort of like audio and visuals together. And so there was like this sort of conversations between different practices and mediums that I was really fascinated by. And that's how I came, you know, to create these works. And really, it's really fluid, because I like, you know, I'm into films, I'm into art, or I'm into like experiences, sort of like immersive, more immersive experiences. So it really depends what I want to create, but mostly it relates to how sort of like society permeates every aspects of our daily lives, whether we're aware of it, whether we aren't, and what it brought with that, how it changed our ways of thinking, and what you know, what are we losing with it as well? Because again, you know, attention span is one of those, and you know, the ways is interfacing between our interactions as humans, and with the world as well, not just you know, humans, but like animals in general, and and you know, all living beings, I'd say.
Yeah. So for us, experiments was like big part of our work, and we always try to find a new way, new technologies, because technology right now, it's also the language, and you can put like many more meaning inside the work if you're using some materials or technologies
in general. Yeah.
In general, for example, like we find when we find this plastic mesh, we realize that it's a good metaphor with social net, which has covered us, and we like have this visibility because of our activity and social connection.
The same, like we've been using different technologies like since 2008. Even there were SMS and MMS, and we were dealing with the phones, and then it developed somehow with augmented reality, because so the most important part for the artist is a filter that that people are looking through, and like in this filter in the camera, if you can put some works that can move and you can break the normal physics of things, it's quite nice. It's also influenced by the kinetic installations that we like since long time, and you are dealing with the physics each time, and it's sometimes difficult, but when you can just apply something in AR or any other technology that provides you to skip this physical world, it's quite nice. And so it's nice to combine, and it's nice to see how the tool also can develop the future vision, like of things, like as with AI, how we can imagine how it can transform the society as well. It's also nice philosophical tool as well for the artists to express themselves and to make some projections into the future. And it's quite nice to use different tools to mix them, like in our practice. It's not only like sculpture, for example, it's also augmented reality sometimes. It also depends on the idea. If you need to make the video, you need nothing, you just make a video, then it can be NFT or whatever. And so tools, like as much tools we have, it's good. It's all the opportunities for the artists, I think.
Because in this virtual place, you don't need like any agreement to make a virtual piece like inside the Louvre or like on Times Square or wherever you want. Actually, you're like totally free to create your virtual art, augmented reality art. Don't have any borders.
Yeah,
it's very cool.
We did also the projects like in the cities in Paris and Venice, where people can easily discover the buildings or the places that they know with the new objects, and you don't need to have any permission. So it's kind of the gray zone of involving art into the real life, let's say. So it also kind of works. It's nice tools, let's say.
Yes, definitely. And Pita, what attracted you to kind of begin working with these technologies as a curator and scholar?
I guess it's more about my background. I have a BA in design and visual communication, and I started back then, like maybe 12, 14 years ago. I started studying design and got very interested in coding, and it was at the same time that platforms like Tumblr and like social media was just emerging. So I was very interested in that focus on globality and then being in touch with people from other parts of the world that maybe didn't have much of commonalities around my context, but then we have a lot of common ideas about life or of culture. And that really like got me into exploring online environments, and also in terms of curation, I'm very interested in understanding how artists are challenging the way we think about technology, because it maybe looks like a simple idea, but actually like bringing a very visual, poetic way of looking at things can make a difference, and it actually makes us think very differently about the technology that surrounds it, or the kind of relationships that we have with technology, things like social media, or where is it like VR, or augmented reality that has been used a lot in a commercial setting, like with all the Instagram filters where we're being sold things, but also at the same time they are taking some part of our data to inform some data sets that we don't go through. So I'm very interested in how artists are really like looking into these technologies and really questioning and producing ways to approach them, because sometimes technology seems something so far away from us that it looks very abstract, and if you maybe don't know how to code, or if you don't know how the technology works technically, you think you don't have any authorship on it, but actually we have a lot of authorship on it. And within the V&A, one thing that like really moves the collection and the team that I'm working with is in ways to enable conversations around these technologies, and also in ways we preserve the work of artists now, because it's digital art, as like a lot of like I know, and most of you might know, is very hard to preserve because technology is constantly changing. So it's about how to preserve the legacy of these artists into the future as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think, some kind of really interesting points, and it's good to see so many of you kind of mention all the positive opportunities presented by technology. And I was wondering if kind of in your work as artists and curators, like did you encounter any particular challenges or concerns related to kind of technology or the way you've been able to use it?
Many challenges. Personally, I've been, as working with technology, like I've been thinking a lot, like about the impact that it has, the footprint, the environmental footprint. At first, talking about, the energy consumption of graphics card, because those are the core of what I'm using to create art. And I don't think it's something that I come up with, I guess I had to justify myself because I guess, my graphics card on a scale to, massive data mines for, extraction purposes or whatever purpose, it's, everything has to be balanced, and for other than that, I mean, working with VR and, the first assumption, this first association that people generally make is metaverse, when you have that in your hands. And I feel like the metaverse, it's very controversial and have a lot of debatable points that are, aren't really of concerns for these big corporations pushing their strategies. For example, how Meta, Facebook, that is driving predominantly this field and into the mainstream. It for me it lacks a lot of the ethical context of that. Is it an escapist platform for us to forget about other issues? Is it another marketing platform where you buy and sell digital assets? What is it? Or what is the implication of these big corporations that will eventually dictate the way we live? If how they say, if we're all going to move into this metaverse at some point, what would that imply? Shouldn't we be discussing that and setting the grounds for an ethical platform for our future, rather than developing something for the sake of making more profits, having more engagement with their users, to then what, is that, what will that imply? Yeah, I don't know. That's one example.
I think, Pita, what you said about preservation is really interesting. I've been working in digital art, and what I do now, which is dovetails more into performance and maybe more tactile mediums. But working in the image, the digital image, for as long as we have, this issue of preserving, collection, legacy is an inherent challenge of the medium, right? Like you're not using the same computer or operating system or browser as you did even maybe 5 years ago. So how does work made on this very unique ephemeral canvas, how does that get to be observed by and studied by and celebrated by researchers and artists and generations to come, and are talking about preservation and with the V&A really made me think of that differently, because I'm, you think you're on like a maybe 5-year time scale or 10-year time scale, but when it comes to these institutional preservation values, it's in perpetuity. And when you think about digital art across that time scale, you recognize the really vital aspects of obviously having a very sustainable footprint in making the work, but also thinking about where this is stored and how that participates in a larger dialogue about the art of our day, which is so digital, obviously. So it's really, I've loved our conversations about what that entails, as it is a challenge, I think, of the medium. So.
Yeah, I guess in terms of preservation and like future proven for an institution like the V&A that we're hoping it lasts another like 200 years or plus. You need to consider that maybe, and especially in the current climate of environmental change, you even need to consider that maybe in maybe 20 years' time, we won't have as much energy as we have at the moment, or like things can shift very drastically in just like 20 years or 50 years going forward. So you really need to think about how you preserve the work, and especially when the context keeps changing or disappearing, and how do you communicate that with other generations, or like how do you have a dialogue between generations about what these technologies mean or these artworks mean in new contexts.
Yeah, as for the challenges, I think for us, for example, it's always a challenge to make a new project with any technology or even with a tool like quite simple, because each time you are doing experiments and you never know the result. As for the preservation of the digital works, it's also, it's a big issue for all the digital artists, I think. So from our side, we are trying to have, for example, for AR, we have an application since 2016, I think, and trying to renew it each time, and trying to update and to be compatible with new phones. And it takes energy, like to keep it working. And for sure, it's a big question, like if you did just, for example, one project and then you will not continue it in this media, how are we going to preserve? And but even like in the museums, there is an old TV screens, like with an old video art that preserved this epoch. Maybe like we all should like preserve these old phones with the old iOS, for example, for the future, like as a musification of the the tool of the digital media. But it's quite tricky each time.
That's very true, actually.
Close. Everyone.
Yeah.
I've actually, it made me think, because some of my works are now made with like some outdated software, and if it's outdated now and I created it like a year ago, I can't imagine in like 5 years time, like nobody will be ever able to like open it up, like compatibility, it's a big issue. Backwards compatibility. And I guess it's again something ingrained in like this way of like producing more and more constantly, because everything we use is designed to be obsolescent very quickly. Couple of years tops. Every sort of hardware that we use have a sort of like very short time span. It's not designed for it to last. It's designed for it to be used for a very short time so that we can buy more. And again, that's another problem that's tied into the way it's fabricated. Yeah.
I find conversations about collections while they're in like digital preservation and the difficulty of that, right? Like we're talking about like work we've done maybe a year ago, you have to update for the new iOS, or the M5 chip is screwing up a lot of my robotic systems, whatever. But even though it seems like a really niche concern, the preservation of an artwork, it's a very privileged consideration. What I do think is interesting about it too is it really brings in the fallibility of these systems, which sometimes, having worked in AI art for quite a few years now, I think the fallibility of the system is not always, and kind of the brokenness or the brittleness of it, we're not always reminded of, because it's supposed to be like the next transformative revolution. But in reality, both are true. Both change the landscape, like something like, stable diffusion changes the landscape, but also the technologies are quite fragile. And I think I like that this reminds us of that. As exciting as these things are, they're also, just very porous and breakable and broken inherently. So I think it's an interesting poetic there that I kind of geek out on, I guess.
And again, it's like, if you think that, what all of these like big tech CEOs are saying, that we're all moving into the metaverse, what about, the climate? If already we're having issues with electricities in various parts of the world, the internet goes down. What about that? Aren't they thinking about that? There will be like parts of the world where no one will be able to use it, and it will be part of like a structural foundations of a future society.
They will try to improve the tools and the stations, but definitely it will be a reaction in our environment. Like it will be definitely produce more heat, and but still there is a different possibilities. But it also they all linked with the tools, with the servers, and with the machines. So they will do it somehow.
All this project, it's about how to like spend more energy. Don't save it.
Don't reduce the consumption. But anyway, this is like a new oil. Yeah, if we imagine like many years ago, like when people discovered oil, so it became a revolution. So it means that this is the other starting point of the next revolution of AI, and this is a new history of consumption, the new methods of reducing it. It's like just a beginning now, looks like. And maybe there will be better tools and better, I don't know, servers, whatever. Maybe they will try to make it less hot.
Indeed, yeah. I certainly hope that there will be kind of more efforts to reduce climate change from, let's say, tech corporations and other actors. And certainly kind of in my experience of working in AI art also for a few years now, when I was kind of beginning to work in the field, I noticed that it was primarily the tech corporations that were supporting artistic practice. So I know Google had an arts and culture residency, so did Facebook, and they were kind of funding a lot of their events and activities. And now, like a few years on, like I've got this event here at Gazelli in Mayfair, and also an online exhibition opening at Unit tomorrow. So it feels like the conversation has shifted and permeated more different kind of parts of the world. And I was kind of thinking in terms of you as artists and curators working in the field, like what kind of institutions do you want to see supporting the field, and what sort of support do you want from them? Like, should it be all from big tech, or do you need more support coming from museums, galleries, or should there be kind of more unique institutions that cater specifically to all these kind of new developing mediums?
I mean, I have a very subjective experience. I mean, I obviously tried to get in touch with Google and big tech corporations because that's where the money at. If I am to approach art as a living, sustainable practice, it's really difficult nowadays through the traditional art world because it's traditional and it's, you know, it's very slow to progress. And so, of course, I did try, and I was, you know, my friend was working at Google Arts and Culture for a while, so I approached her and I proposed a couple of works actually, and one which she said was more tied to their ideas was about, you know, mental well-being, so an immersive experience about, you know, meditation being in a forest, pretty much. And the other was a bit more of a problematic one, where I was sort of like talking about Web 3.0, crypto, the sort of like financialization of everything, you know, that this the sort of like crypto market and NFTs kind of like started to bring forward was this idea that in the future metaverse, you could find you make profit out of anything and in people's actions, including, and that she said that although it was like a very interesting idea, that Google wouldn't have liked it, of course, because it goes against what they're kind of like, I guess, maybe trying to promote or trying to go through. And so I guess it works when this sort of like collaborations works really well when you have a very pro-tech attitude towards the project you're proposing. And yeah, I'm sure that's fair, you know, it's a point of view, but there's you know, there's a spectrum to cover, and you can't really be that selective about things that we might face. So yeah, I'm happy that more institutions are opening up to this, because there's maybe more room for critical more critical projects about the technology involved, I guess.
Yeah, I think for sure there will be a lot of critical projects as soon as the artists are working with the new media, because it's like one of the tasks of the art to do some critics of the world. And but also, as you said about the carbon trace, and it also, I posed the question about what's better, for example, to produce NFT and even with the worst way of you know, heating the planet, etc., or you want to go and buy, I don't know, some wood or plastic, or I don't know, like plaster, and then you produce some sculpture, and then you, if you will check your carbon trace, for example, from the supplier to your studio back then to the gallery or museum or whatever. So it all in the comparison, like, so it's quite difficult to say like what's worster, because we do not know the amount. Like, depends if you want to produce 100 NFTs or you want to produce a small object from wood. So it's not only about that. Mm-hmm. And anyway, the truth is in balance anyway. And we are here to try to find a balance.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely, it's I'm not against NFTs per se. I think it's a new form if it's a new art market really for digital, the digital environment. It's about the spectrum. I think there's pros and cons for everything, but if tech companies sponsors or funds the projects that are only making them look good, then it becomes problematic because it's some sort of censorship, or there are some fundamental issues about it. You just can't pick the project that makes you look good and promote these technologies without talking about also the maybe the negative aspects that could be. And for me, it's very natural to talk about it. But I can see that from that side, they're not so open about it.
They are doing a lot of marketing, yeah, and anyway, ethical aspect is important in all spheres. Digital world is equal to the real one now, and we really should take care of how they're going to develop it. If it's not only the marketing of one company that just wants to have their interest everywhere and control everything, and what's about the data privacy and etc. And how they can break the lives of people if the person will be, like, I don't know, deleted, exiled from the virtual world. So how he can exist in the real one. It's all, all about ethics still in these questions. Yeah.
Yeah, I think, every generation of artists, financial support is always really challenging. Any sort of support for one's work when it occupies the subjective spaces is a challenge. I think obviously there's complications between industry and whether that's technology or academia or the humanities. All of that is a pastiche, like a random, or not random, but there are a lot of different ways to find support, I think, for your work. Having been in the space for for quite a few years now and defining a little bit of the space in my own way, I can definitely see the pros and cons of working across a lot of different industries, because you need, I think there's something about the sophistication of technological development that sometimes can benefit from different types of institutional partners. Obviously, when that dovetails into something like research fields or academia, like different, there's a lot of ways to go into that. What I get really excited by is when support expands, which I think in a lot of ways is happening now. Support in more traditional arts, you might say, which is different than it was in the landscape a few years ago. I think academic fields, philosophy, ethics, design, all these things sort of, they congregate in this space in a way that they never have. I think there's a lot more artist-to-artist support now because of the idea of the ledger that I think has driven a lot of interest and dialogue around digital art in general. So I'm definitely not one. I don't necessarily understand institutions. I don't think that's really my strength, but I do think of institutions as made up of people that might share your values, and I think the dialogue around that right now is more supportive and more porous and more interested than it was when they were more nascent. So yeah, I think we could probably all talk for 7 hours about that, but we don't want to do that on a Tuesday. But yeah, very, very interesting times to be a practitioner with a lot of different avenues for support and conversation, I think.
Yeah, it's interesting what you say, though, that you feel kind of, you don't think of it so much as institutions, but more as individuals kind of supporting your work. Because certainly, I don't know, in my work, whenever I work with a different type of client, I can just see they want so many different things, from the way they kind of operate. Like a lot of my artists, like I never speak to them in person. It's just like on Twitter DM because they don't like calls. But like when you begin to work with more corporate clients, they schedule regular meetings and they want you to spend a lot of time translating your work from Excel to PowerPoint and then kind of backwards and forwards. And with arts institutions, of course, there's much more focus on the way you communicate the work and kind of linking it to other artistic practices. So I've certainly felt that I've needed to kind of pick up different skills when I was kind of catering to different institutions.
I guess support should come from everywhere because I think, yeah, like you will see, like your work is very collaborative, and not like we all have very, yeah, we all have limited resources in terms of human resources, economic resources, and cultural resources. So I guess everyone brings something different to the conversations or to the artist practices. Corporations historically have provided access to technology to artists. So even in the, like, think about the 60s, at a place like Bell Labs, that was a laboratory, scientific laboratory in New Jersey that with AT&T provided access to artists and creative collaboration between their scientists and artists that were interested in having some access to this technology when we didn't know like what computers could do for us, or like as a society we weren't very aware about computers or the impact that will have in our lives. So it's about access to technologies that maybe we haven't even envisioned yet, and they need ideas to test it, but also the artists are very eager to try these technologies. And then from the galleries have also supported artists in terms of creating community, because commercial and non-commercial galleries promote the work of artists and create some audiences around their work. And also within museums, like a museum like the V&A will also provide a space for artists to meet with audiences in the future as well. And also within the context of the collection, like we sometimes end up collaborating with artists that will have access to the collection, like the Middle East collection or the medieval textile collection. So it's about bringing other ideas also.
Yeah, indeed. So I'm conscious of the time, and I think we've been going for like 45 minutes. So I'm going to ask one more question, and then we're going to open up the floor to you guys. So start thinking if you have any questions you want to ask. So I think, yeah, for my last question, I wanted to maybe kind of think about the latest developments, particularly in AI art, because in the past year or two, of course, we've seen a kind of ChatGPT being able to generate really good texts very quickly, and also tools like Stable Diffusion, where you can write the prompt and then you get all these beautiful pictures. And it feels like there's been kind of a lot of excitement from various aspects of the community, and also maybe some concerns, right? Because a lot of artists who've been maybe putting up their work on DeviantArt over the years have now kind of found that this work's being used to train all of these systems and produce work that is very similar in style to what they do. And yeah, I was just wondering kind of what is your take on that? Do you feel kind of threatened? Should, you know, artists be worried? Is it all kind of inevitable that we all become part of this kind of artistic data set? Yeah, what do you think?
This probably wastes a lot of time, but I have a tendency to, not the dialogue, but the thing that I do, which is when I see a new toy out there, I spend a lot of time learning it. And even if I don't bring it into part of my practice, but I was particularly curious about this new wave of text prompt-based image generation, and I learned a lot about how the system works, and I thought it was really interesting in a lot of ways. Maybe I was learning because I was a little bit worried that I'd be out of a job, as I'm sure many people are right now. But I do genuinely think, at least for how I've been thinking about using image generation tools, it's not really why we value images. Maybe in a commercial setting, being able to output something with a certain aesthetic has some value, and I do think there are really significant ethical concerns about these data sets being trained without artist consent. Holly Herndon's doing amazing work in that. There's a lot of pushback in the artistic community, rightfully so, against essentially stealing an artist's livelihood in a lot of ways. But I do think that meaning making will always lie in a person and their ability to. It's not about the visual sophistication of the image necessarily. It's about the why of an artist and why they do things. So I do think that that will remain intact. It does create interesting conversations about authorship, but at the end of the day, I think learning the tools, understanding a little bit about what they do, and not being too frightened about a fully automated future is my thinking with that, especially as I work in not only digital but traditional mediums. Like they're not going away. I don't think sculpture, dance, drawing, or painting is going away because someone has a large painting data set. I think it's a misunderstanding of what the digital file actually is. So, but obviously a very contentious topic that feel free to disagree with me on any of that. But what do you think? How's that impact the collection?
Yes, but I'm just thinking more about the idea of because it's not only in art, no? Like we're all like a little bit concerned about losing our jobs because an automated system will, like emerge. But I think the idea of art is not automatic. So I think that idea of automatization that maybe some of these platforms produce will not, like take away the idea of the artist or the meaning that the artists have for society. And this is also because even in the 1940s and 50s with cybernetics like coming as a field and bringing that introspection into considering machine, like kind of moving us away from machines and like always hesitating about them because of the background, like coming from a post-war technology that have been applied to society. We have always like questioned the machine and actually like finding kind of at points like considering it as an enemy as a society. But I think also a lot of this technology is still today is operated by humans. Like there's not still like the autonomous system that governs itself. Like a lot of these technologies are are empowered by humans, are administered by humans. So all of this labor is made by humans. And in terms of an artist, like I don't think artists are just thinking about image making. So unless you're just thinking about producing images from random data sets, I don't think you should be like very concerned about being displaced by these technologies.
I would be remiss if I didn't point out a little bit that I think there are different ways to engage with these technologies that don't that aren't extractive or aren't reliant on a lack of artist consent. I was quite pleased. I've been developing a data set of drawings for the past 2 decades that I use to train one of my robotic units. I called the project Memory. I was, again, I would be remiss to not bring this up, but like there is, I think, support, institutional support for what is a smaller data set and a smaller AI model, which was the first AI model to be collected by a major art institution, happens to be the V&A, which Pita and I worked on, obviously. So I think there are different ways of thinking about these configurations and how we engage with them, but I think there's also people who really support the agency and authorship of the artist and institutions who are doing so in a way that I think challenges our idea of art without this extractive, automated lens to it. So that made me really excited about something like an artistic data set and an RNN model being preserved in perpetuity. So that I thought was quite, it made me think about the work in a lot of different ways.
Definitely. Matteo, Recycle Group, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, actually, I think that in our like theory, it was a nice dream to like totally merge with the AI in the future, and I think that we are all like humans, like who feed this AI, and as soon as it gives us not the best results, means that maybe we should ask a question to ourselves where we did some mistakes, you know, when we were training it. But actually, it's not that big, I think, problem for us if the machine is training on you based on your images or something like that, because it's like a river of information, and it's quite okay when your images are using to train something, and then they can create something even better. It's nice at developing the world. It pushes the evolution, and it's like open source. It's like you give your information into the internet, and so it belongs to everyone. I mean, that everyone can use your image. For the permissions, it depends like in which case, but generally it's okay. But it's a nice challenge, like how we can like really develop our future as a society, not only as artists, like dealing with the different chats and AI. It's the only perspective that humanity has in the future, I think, using AI. So it's like a next revolution, technical.
And actually, it's already here. And it's just an instrument, and for artists, nothing. You don't need to be scared about artificial intelligence in the art world, and just one new good instrument. It depends how you use it. It's always question about it. Because art work with ideas, not only with technologies.
It was the same issue when the Photoshop appeared, for example. Like everyone said, or the cameras on the phones. Like, oh, so everyone then will be a photographer, or everyone will be as an artist, like if you have a Photoshop. But look, it didn't change that much our world. So it just gave us much more tools that we can develop, and the same as with AI. Like on this step of AI, we can use it the same as Photoshop. But in the next steps, who knows how it will develop, like how what the ethics and what's the construction around this of our world will appear. And so the artists and philosophers are like the important, I think, elements to maybe guide somehow this development of the technologies, to ask nice questions that can bring some profit to society. And it's nice to live in this time, actually. So
definitely. Matteo, any thoughts here before we open up to questions?
Yeah. I don't know if my take is like maybe it's a bit more on the pessimist side. Not, I mean, more of the fact that, yeah, I agree when you say that, you know, it's about the agency of the artist to make the artwork, and that AI is a tool. But also I've just recently seen this video, and I was really mind blown by it, because it was like an AI generated anime, basically. And the guy that did it filmed a couple of people on a green screen, and then processed it through stable diffusion. And the outcome was amazing, was like incredible. And like, it went viral, and he had a lot of like really good receptions online. But then the critics came through, and for a really good reason, that the style that it was used, it was from a human being that didn't consent the use of his artworks in the creation of what this guy did. So he was saying, he was promoting this new piece as like the democratization of animation, because obviously animators spends 1,000,000 hours working on their craft, you know, like really honing it, like spending years. And we probably can all relate, like thinking about, you know, renders and whatever. So sure, it's democratizing it, but if you're training your models from someone else's works without their consent, then that becomes an issue of legitimacy. And you know, yeah, I think for me that is the biggest concern. And it is a tool, you know. I think it's a great tool if you collaborate with it, if you use it with your own data sets and create something that it's a sort of hybrid, or, you know, but it's also bit problematic when these guys comes around saying these really big statements, and the fact that you know, OpenAI, you know, that created like Stable Diffusion, I think, and ChatGPT, right? Is
ChatGPT and DALL-E.
And DALL-E, sorry. They started as open source, but now they've really turned around like completely, and they went for like a maximal profit sort of like business. And so that isn't for research purposes anymore, like they said, you know, that is for making money. And who benefits? Not us in general, I think, as the creators. That's my point of view. I mean, I'm sure that, you know, it's jeopardizing a lot of like jobs with sort of like companies and you know, various businesses, because it's going to be like way faster to produce this amount of work. Obviously doesn't take away, you know, from the artist what the artist does. That's not just about image making, but of course it's going to take away my job a little bit, you know, not as an artist, but as a freelancer. And I guess it's part of progress. It's like we have to adapt and reinvent ourselves constantly, but that's what we always do, because there's always like some kind of technologies that like throws us in the ocean and let us, like, you know, if we know how to swim, that's cool. If not, you know, you have to learn fast, like, and that's the kind of like recurring state of tech, that it's like, there was this guy, David Rudnick, that posted this tweet that was referring to this sort of like state of constantly you know, giving birth to all these like sort of like disruptive technologies, because they you know, good system creates balance, you know, and whereas these sort of like tools are constantly throwing us, you know, in despair, really. And it kind of like forces us to you know, reinvent us. And I think in a way it's cool. I love that, you know, that's what I always do. But when we are forced to that, it's like, you know, are we using technology, or is that technology that is using us? It's like, where is that boundary? You know, it's like it's very blurry, you know, the way that this tech narrative is driven. And it really fascinates me, you know, because again, like Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, make really big statements about, you know, that general AI is coming, AGI is coming, and they were very much like marketing strategies, and it's nowhere near that, I think. And you know, one guy dictating the future of mankind, that's basically what we're talking about, because it, you know, it's a really big and somewhat arrogant statement to make. I'm gonna say it, and it shouldn't be in his hands to decide, you know. So yes, very exciting technologies, very fascinating, but also from my point of view problematic, because they are driving, and they will drive more and more everything around us. And the more we develop these tools, the less we understand them, really. Not even the people that makes them. They're turning into black boxes. And when that point comes when they will reinvent themselves, which are already, probably soon, then who have agency? Like, will human have the agency to understand and make decisions at that point? I don't know. They're like, yeah.
Indeed, lots of very good concerns, and I guess, yeah, about the technology itself, about all the different actors, and yeah, we could definitely continue discussing, but I feel that the audience also probably has questions they're super interested in getting answered. So maybe we could tackle these. So if you have a question, put your hand up, and then Imogen will find you.
Sorry, you're going to have to speak into the mic for the recording, so it's not going to like shout.
Sure. Hi. So I recently read an article on how governments are gonna kind of basically, if you have AR art, you can't copyright it. So that was the first comment I had. And then the second one was on, I guess with digital, you just can make infinite copies, right? So that's where the big problem is, right?
Did you hear that question online? Or should I repeat? Yes, maybe I'll try and repeat it if I remember it correctly. So there's somebody in the audience who read an article about, so was it the copyright of AI or AR? Yes, you cannot copyright anything generated with AI. And then I think there was a second part that was about the possibilities of AI to kind of keep generating infinite images or something like that, right?
No. They have, I don't mean to answer the question, I just want to help clarify. They have certain policies around the fact that it can't be used commercially, they can't give licenses and so on and so forth, probably aligned to something to do with the data set that fed and trained the models. And I think the second question was more around how do you authenticate and show provenance for the original of digital artworks, because you have right-click savers, right? And I think that was the theme that the article may be.
I mean, I think that legislation is put into place to protect artists, which I'm not mad at, frankly. The space is there's a lot of bold claims in it at the moment. The tool is quite widely available. So there are obviously going to be bad actors who are literally putting in artist names in the prompt to see what comes from it. So I'm encouraged by that kind of legislation. There's obviously more public image data sets, historical data sets that may not be included in that. But especially protecting contemporary artists, I think, is really important, because it's quite a trying time for everyone, but also people who make images. In terms of provenance, obviously there's provenance through the blockchain, right? But I think there's always a question of, what, and I don't think that's native to digital, even though that's obviously the turnaround time for replicating an image in digital is most simple in some ways, but I think it raises interesting questions about what the art actually is. Is a copy of a painting less of the experience of the painting? Is it the single object? Is it its ledger on the blockchain? I think what I always loved about digital art was that it maybe this is a super Web 2 thing to say, and I apologize, but I still do like the idea that it almost, for me, exists in a browser without provenance, but that obviously has changed over time. So art that engages with these ideas has been historic. Like Andy Warhol also called these ideas into question through printmaking and through replicating one image. So I think this is a age-old dialogue that's not really restricted to digital, that it's interesting to see its new life come out now.
More questions?
Yeah. I hope that was a helpful answer in any way. Yeah.
Hi. Firstly, thank you. That was really interesting. Thank you for sharing about your creative practices. I don't really come from a proper tech background, so if my question isn't clear, please ask for clarification. But I just want to know how you guys feel about the accessibility and the sustainability in terms of like the future of art. Because you spoke about like if someone was creating a sculpture, you go out, find some wood or plastic and recycle. But as a student, kind of learning, like I'm in a course where it's called creative computing. So there's people who come from a fine art painting background, but also people who come from a very digital VFX background. And then on that course, you talk about how just trying to find yourself as an artist in this world that's like constantly changing. And then there's some people who have not had that technology like education. And it's like, how do you make sure that it doesn't become this like class issue where like people who can access this education, we can learn about this. If you are someone who sculpts, then now all of a sudden you know about AI. But then when you go into the world of work, there's people who don't realize what they're getting into. I hope that makes sense. Just like if you have any advice on, yeah, how as like young people, as students, we can make sure art is accessible and it's sustainable and it doesn't become this like elitist class thing, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it's a really good question. I mean, I've really I like digital art because I think personally it can be really accessible nowadays. If you have access to a phone or a screen or the internet in general, for a variety of different artworks, you can access them quite easily. I think it's a bit more of an issue with projects like made in VR, for example, because those you need more expensive hardware. So I guess you need to have like public private spaces that hosts the work. So like Gazelli, for example, you know, it's free and everybody can go and see the work. And I think this is really amazing because you know, not everybody has the possibility to get a VR headset, or you know, it's, you know, what are the chances for them to use it even, you know? So I think, yeah, we need probably more spaces that are open access for that sort of thing. And yeah, what was the other question?
I think that was kind of the main question. Okay. I don't know if there were any other comments, or shall we try and answer another question?
I also think it's about finding a community, because as a young, I'm thinking more about the perspective of a young practitioner or a young curator, is about finding a community, because then you can get access to some technologies, or also in terms of coding or understanding different systems or things that you want to engage with. So community is very important, and also cross collaboration. Like looking to collaborate also with institutions. And I think as you move into different contexts, like for example, like showing some works probably like are net-based if you're showing them in another country that doesn't have that high internet speeds. Like also the way like people see the work will change a lot. So it's not also about just sustainability and accessibility. Once you're making the work, you need to think about how is it going to be shown or who can access it, because like that is going to really like rule on how the work is shown. Because if you're working with a specific technology that then not many people can access, that's going to shape the way the work can be seen, and then where it can be seen by whom. So it's about thinking about opening that access as well in terms of the tools that you decide to work with.
Yeah, and sorry, because I understood the question to be from a viewer perspective, not from a sort of like more creative maker. And yeah, definitely community. It's like that's the way. Open source. You know, there's a lot of tools now that are freely available. Like the one that I'm using predominantly now, and it's called Unreal Engine, and it's free. And it's such a great business model. Those guys are making lots of money through a game that they developed, and now they're investing all of those profit into just like making a great community of developers and artists, and they're really expanding, you know, rapidly. And that's just one example. You know, other 3D tools like Blender, now it's really gaining a lot of traction. It's again, it's open source, it's free, and it's super versatile. It's an amazing tool. And yeah, I think community and open sourceness, it's the way, for sure.
And the hardware.
Those are great tools for sure, but I think there's also something that it's easy to forget, that it's not about learning the tool set or having the shiniest toy. Art, at the end of the day, should be about point of view and sort of hybridizing your unique perspective with the context in which you live. Obviously, we're talking about that in terms of a technological context, but just a small reminder that it's not about the shiniest toy. It's not about the fanciest paintbrush, but about, and I think when you're starting out, I think that can be kind of scary, because you're like, oh, there's all this amazing spectacle out there, all this press for these new tools. But from someone who's been in the practice for over a decade, it's really at the end of the day about your point of view, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, I think we probably have time for just one more quick question.
Just one question. So, say for instance, we can see that you know, technology is presenting kind of new models of living, new models of operating, new models of buying art, and obviously then the kind of the technology to generate images or kind of modes is challenging, I guess, new aesthetics, or challenging our understanding of beauty or what beauty is. So I'm just wondering, how much pressure do you think you feel as artists to conform to art that kind of conventionally looks like art within a mode that is kind of not operating in the conventional systems, and also imagery that potentially speaks to people from conventionally understood notions of what beauty is, or what kind of things might be deemed as being pretty?
Sorry, is that, would you be able to repeat? I know it's difficult, but like I missed some.
So I think there were kind of some different ideas there regarding kind of the rapidly developing new technologies, and then kind of the pressure for artists to kind of maybe work towards certain aesthetics or beauty standards.
We're in this changing world of aesthetics and society and models, and then within use of technology, often that is kind of, I guess, sometimes reduced to recognisable things we recognise as art, or imagery we recognise as familiar imagery. I guess, how much is that pressure, or do you feel like, you know, how much do you try to challenge what is art itself, what can be art, and what is an image that can be presented?
I paint with robots in a room, so I think that I like the challenge of thinking about the form, and what is the artifact, and what is the image, and how does data feed into it, and presence. So I think that's kind of the exciting part of the field, thinking about different applications and really breaking apart that mold. We're not all sitting here talking about like ceramics, you know. I think we're all really open to this idea that art can be a lot of different things. So I find that to be a quite exciting part of the work. What about you guys?
Yeah, Andrew, go.
Continue, no problem.
Yeah, I mean, from my point of view, it's quite interesting. Like I remember when I was like starting to get into, you know, like digital art, I was really into like glitch art because like you were, you know, working with issues pretty much, technological faults really to create like imagery, which was then considered art because like it's the beauty of the error sort of thing. So definitely you create new aesthetics with it. And on the other hand, I think you know, sometimes I tend to like steer away from the sort of like mainstream aesthetics that technology brings as well, because obviously, you know, there are modes to operate within these frameworks, and you know, it's sometimes it's easy to kind of like fall into the same aesthetic, and that I think it's a thing in itself, really. You know, how many people have made AI art that like for example style again, you know, it's a very familiar sort of like visual effect to say. And so how do you kind of like represent that in your own way as an artist? Like how do you kind of like mold your, you know, ideas and you know, creativity into that without falling into the sort of the commonplace? I think that's also very, for me, it's what I usually think about. Yeah.
All right. I think we should. Oh, you want to say a few quick words?
Yeah, I just wanted to shortly add some. I was thinking that you always will find. It doesn't matter how many ways of and how many different aesthetics our world is generating, and now it's even nicer that this is much more aesthetic that generates by AI, which is also gives us more options and more visions, like multi-world, multi-universe. And it's if you're an artist and you put some meaning there, people will definitely find what you wanted to say there in the work. So you can use it still as a tool, and this aesthetics is quite interesting. And like I really like when it's not linked to the physics, and when you can really, as you said, Matteo, like playing with the glitches and with a new aesthetic. So it's nice. It's a nice challenge for artists anyway. It's just opening wider your imagination, and then you can catch more sources. Good.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much for all your insightful contributions. I think we've all enjoyed listening to that over here. And thank you to the audience for coming over here and spending like an hour and a half listening to the discussion and contributing some very exciting questions. And thanks to Gazelli for making the event happen. And I think Imogen might have some last words.
Not much of an outro, but thank you for joining us this evening, and please keep up to date with what we have going on, because we have a lot of more interesting talks throughout the year. And thank you again to everybody who joined in, Matteo and Recycle Group, Sougwen, Pita, and Luba as well. Thank you for moderating. And we hope to see you all soon. Thank you very much.